Thank you all for joining us. We are going to move forward with our meeting for June the 1st, 2023. It is 5:02, and we're calling this meeting to order. Dr. Hooker, if you would conduct roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Heidi Hensley, Ms. Claudia Butts, Ms. Linda Davis,
Here.
Dr. Patricia Yeager,
Here.
Mr. Tim Denson,
Here.
Dr. Mumby Anderson, Dr. Lakeisha Gant,
Here.
Ms. Nicole Hull, Mr. Mark Evans.
Here.
Perfect. Okay, so we do have a quorum. We are going to go ahead and I'm going to open the floor to amend and or adopt the agenda.
So move. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Davis, a second by Dr. Yeager. Any follow-up questions or discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, if you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same signs. Okay, that motion carries 7-0. We'll move to item 3. This is our millage rate hearing. Dr. Hooker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'll ask Dr. Elizabeth Whitaker to come present our millage rate hearing.
1.8, you will see the net tax dollar increase going up and the tax percent increase going up, and that is due to those reassessment values, the growth and the digest due to those reassessment values. So our next steps, we did the initial board presentation in April. We've had input sessions, we've updated information with more firm and accurate numbers as we've gotten those. There was a tentative budget passed in May. We've held 2 budget presentations, we've held 3 millage rate hearings, and we expect to set the millage rate sometime in June. That concludes my presentation if the board has any questions.
Thank you. The floor is open for follow-up questions.
On that tax credit?
We'll have public
Oh,
comment in just a
I'm
minute.
sorry, yeah,
this
for
is just,
the board to have any follow-up questions.
okay. We'll switch to public comment now.
Okay, Mr. Denson and then Dr. Evans. Oh, okay, Mr. Denson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I previously mentioned in the first millage rate hearing, I am interested in having a reduced millage rate passed of 18.6, just coming down by 0.2, which would bring our revenues from property tax at $120,676,694, reduction of about 1.3 million. And seeing that we have a bit of a surplus and then also a growing fund balance, and also with the fact that our current budget now is budgeted at an assumed 100% employment rate, which, while that would be fantastic, we know is not going to be the reality, which we have 100% employment across the next fiscal year, and that's why we've seen a bit of a growth in our fund balance over the last few years. That I feel like we can easily absorb that reduction of 0.2 of a mil, and so that is something that I am considering making a motion for when we get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Denson. Any additional follow-up questions or comments? Dr. Anderson.
So I heard Mr. Denson say that we have quite a surplus in the tentative budget. But I believe after some adjustments to the tentative budget, that surplus has been reduced dramatically. Am I right in that? I remember a conversation with someone about this.
Yes, you had a conversation with me, and Dr. Whitaker and I met again this morning, and she did some calculations. I'll let her address that.
If you refer back to the detailed budget that we provided, that last tab, the contingency, excess revenue contingency. So the items on that tab, if you were to cut that contingency completely out, then all the items on that tab would be affected.
I believe what Dr. Anderson is referring to, if I'm correct, Dr. Anderson, the $2.3 million, $2.6 million that we had originally said we would have as a remaining fund balance, that has been reduced. Am I correct?
There have been some things added to that excess revenue contingency that if you choose to roll back the millage rate, if you choose to eat into that contingency, that will not be funded.
Okay, and
But
when we're talking about specific numbers, hopefully we can get those to you before 6 o'clock, or either tomorrow we'll get them at some time, so you'll know specifically what that fund balance would be.
Dr. Anderson?
Yeah, so okay. I just want to clarify, because I guess I'm the language is not, I'm not familiar with the language that you're using, and so I just want a little bit of clarity. When I look at the PowerPoint presentation that includes the general budget, the proposed budget, I don't know which slide it is, but one of the slides says that there's a $2.3 million excess in the fund balance.
Mhm.
But then when you open the PDF that has the tentative budget, fund balance, revenues and expenditures, the ending fund balance is $51,000. And so, again,
51?
it says $51,909.
I don't,
Are you,
Can you
look-
pull that
that
up?
doesn't look,
Pardon me.
Or is that,
that doesn't sound right.
That-
If we could pull it up.
Ms. Palmer is trying to pull that to the screen.
this is what I'm looking
I think it might be the addition to the fund balance, the
So
leftover.
there's the, I'm going through the PowerPoint presentation, hold on just a second. Okay, so the FY '24 budget, and I could be looking at that number wrong. On
Can you talk into your mic, please?
slide,
Dr. Anderson, can you speak into your mic? Other board members are unable to hear what you're saying.
okay, so I'm looking at slide 29 on the FY '24 budget proposal PowerPoint. And down there it says a $2.3 million remaining capacity, which I'm taking that figure to represent the surplus or the
It is so the baseline budget plus all the initiatives that we presented, less the revenue that we anticipate to collect, leaves 2.3 million in excess revenue above those baseline and initiatives.
okay.
That's the 2.3 million. In the detailed budget, if you look at the last tab, there's a tab that's excess revenue contingency, and it totals 2.37 million. So there are some items in there that are included that if you pass this budget, could be funded with the 2.37 million, but it's considered excess. It's contingency. It's not things that can't be cut. It's additional items on that last tab.
Okay. And so those items, can you help me remember what those items are that could go into that 2.3 million?
So there's some additional initiatives that
Mhm.
have come since the tentative budget was set. Fine arts,
Mhm.
there's additional budgets for fine arts. Parapros, there's an initiative for parapros to go to 190 days.
Mhm.
There's some additional contingency for fluctuations in fuel costs. So we anticipate that our budget is set at a place that we can feel confident that our fuel cost will fit within that budget. But the 2.3 million, there's some additional fuel costs. There's some additional contingency for emergency situations, things like that.
Okay. Can I ask one?
Yes, and then we'll go to other individuals that may have a question. I think I saw Dr. No? Okay, others, and then we'll circle back around to Dr.
I was just
Anderson.
going to say, I do appreciate that detailed budget file that you sent. That was really, really helpful. Thank you.
Others? Dr. Anderson?
So, just one more point that I'd like to make sure that we are all clear on. So if we rolled back the millage rate, then what we're looking at is potentially removing those additional incentives off the table and just basically using the baseline budget without that 2.3 million for those additional initiatives. So we're talking about not increasing the time for parapros. We're talking about not having any contingency for increases in fuel. And the third thing was the fine arts programming. So not having those additional resources that we've talked about as a board for fine arts programming.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yes.
make that clear. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Denson?
There is a, I mean, on that spreadsheet, there's a lot. There's also just a kind of a generic, what is it, contingency for unpredictable, unforeseen emergencies of 586,000. Contingency for unpredictable degree and step changes throughout the year by certified staff, 185,000.
Can you speak just a little bit louder?
Sure. So there's a few, there's a number of, if you go to, especially to the end of it, there's a number of very generic kind of buckets also. The last one, just simply saying unforeseen emergencies at $586,000. And so I see some of those things as, well, of course, it's not up to us to actually set the way this budget is going to necessarily be spent down to the penny that is going to go to the administration. So if we were to reduce the millage rate somewhat, it would be up to the superintendent administration and seeing exactly what things would be different. My other way I see this is that, could you tell us what the recommended fund balance is annually by GSBA, or what is the common percentage of an annual budget to hold?
The minimum recommended is 15%. I think you as a board, and it's in the financial statements that I'll present in the board meeting, you as a board, I think 16% is what you felt comfortable with, and that's what the graph at the end of the financial statement presentation is set at 16%.
16%?
Mm-hmm.
And then with this budget, what does it actually set our fund balance? Isn't it, I think it's considerably larger than that, correct?
I would have to look at that chart before, I don't want to
I think it says
say numbers.
the fund balance we'd end with would be almost 52,000. 52 million, I mean. 51.9 million, so yeah. In which I believe comes out to, I mean, roughly 24%. So that's the other thing I said, that we have a recommended policy of sitting at a 16% fund balance. We have a 24% fund balance. So I don't see any need that we would have to slash things when we are sitting on a considerably, we're sitting at 150% of our recommended fund balance. And I only see that fund balance growing in this next year because we're budgeting at an assumed 100% employment rate, when that's not going to be the case. And so we're actually probably going to see this fund balance for next year continue to grow as long as we're budgeting with a 0% vacancy built in. So that's why I feel extremely confident that we could do an 18.6 millage rate without actually seeing any of those things, those priorities that we've talked about, be slashed.
Okay. Any additional follow-up?
I have a question for the chair. Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead. Dr. Evans, and then Ms. Hensley.
My question is, if we do follow Mr. Denson's idea of slash mills rate, do we not have to have new meetings for that with new public comment and so forth? Okay, I just want to be clear that, that's something that we're going to have to do, and I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Hensley.
Yeah, so my question is, like, we're talking about a 0.2% decrease. How, so, and I hear the community is asking for that. How does that, a 0.2 decrease actually impact those taxpayers? Is it significant? Like, I think as a school system, we're losing millions And as a taxpayer, it's a minimal, like, I'm talking like
It's about $20.
$20.
On say you have a $300,000 piece of property valued at $300,000, it's about $20.
So in order to like meet the demands of the community, dropping at 0.2 is not really gonna affect that. Okay, that was my question.
All right. Thank you. We are going to, if there are no additional follow-up questions or comments from our board colleagues. Okay, Ms. Davis?
I was going to be quiet. I changed my mind. So I really feel strongly that we have an opportunity.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
I feel strongly that we have an opportunity to show goodwill. And I follow Tim's thinking on how the dollars appear now based on our very first meeting and where we are today. And I would hate for us to ever have to touch that fund balance, because that would mean we're in a terrible recession and we can't pay salaries and we can't do anything. And if the money's not there, it's just not there. And that would be layoffs and all of the other things that go along with a bad decision. But I am feeling, based on the growth from last year and this year with the increases in our property taxes, the increased revenue from our property tax reassessments, and I'm hurting a lot from those on my own property. I just feel like it's an opportunity to do a goodwill act for the community that supports us. And then if it bottoms out, then next year we just raise it again. So I'm feeling pretty confident that we could safely do that. That's from my experience here.
All right. Thank you all very much for your comments. We're going to transition at this point in the agenda to our public comments. And I have a list of individuals that have signed up to speak. The first person is Jeb Bradbury. And as with our last hearing, just want to reiterate a couple of things. I think last time we had our policy up, but you'll have 3 minutes to speak. No personal attacks will be tolerated. If that occurs, I will ask you to take your seat. And the board will not respond to public comments, but when it's appropriate, you will receive a response from the district. Thank you. Mr. Bradbury?
Okay. First thing is last year you had a 2.9 amount difference in that fund balance, $2.9 million. I think she said a 1 point millage rate rollback would be $6.4 million. You've got a fund balance projected to be at the ending fund balance of $54,280,000. And I think you should jump into that, and I think you should give that money. That is taxpayers' money. And the taxpayers deserve to have that money back, because we have been overtaxed here by the school district for a long, long time. You're down over 1,300 students in the last 3 or 4 years, and that budget has gone up, up, up. It's actually gone up since 2020. It's gone up $35 million. And in that same period, you're educating 1,300 less students, over 1,300. Barrow County's millage rate 17.8, Clark 18.8, Franklin County 15.7, Jackson County 16.5, Madison County 15.4, Morgan County 13.8, Oconee County 15.5, Oglethorpe 16.6, Walton County 17.3. Why does it cost so much more to educate kids in Clark County than it does these other counties? Prince Avenue tuition, $12,000. Athens Christian, $8,350. Montessori School, $8,700. St. Joe's, $8,122. That's $8,122. Westminster Christian, $10,700. The University of Georgia tuition for a year for 2 semesters, $12,068. Come on, people. give the taxpayers back their money, roll the millage rate back, you're still going to be well over what you are projecting or what you say you're supposed to have. You've gone up from, at the end of 2022, your budget projection was $36,500,000 was what you were supposed to have in that fund balance. And now here we are, 2 or 3 years later, and it's going to have $54 million in it. You could roll it all the way back 2.5 points if you wanted to, but I don't want to put undue stress on you, but we can still do everything she said with that $2.3 million, and you can still dip into that fund, and you're not going to go below $48 million. And $48 million is way above 16% for that fund balance of your budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joan Roden?
Thank you very much. I came to say one thing, but in hearing all that's being said, I have much more to say. First of all, I'd like to say, at each meeting I've been to, it has been referred that the board will not respond to public comments. But the last meeting I came to, the board did respond to Mr. Bradbury's comments, and I wonder if that's allowed, if it's in the rules that you don't respond back. There was response, but I went to double check to see if that was the case, and the last meeting you had for the budget was recorded and is up online. But the meeting that I went to was not online at the point where Mr. Bradbury had come forward and the board responded to him. Anyway, if it's in the rules, it should be in the rules. Also, someone mentioned that by 6 p.m. tomorrow, you will know what that fund balance will be. We won't be here at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Where are those numbers? I'm concerned that what we see online and what we are getting here, it seems like it changes from time to time. And somebody mentioned, I believe it was Ms. Yeager mentioned that there was a detailed budget file you sent to us, and that was very helpful. Did the public get that detailed file? I'm just wanting to know. I hear some discrepancy even among yourselves. Mr. Denson brought up about the 24% on the 51.9 million, 24% as opposed to the first you said 15%, and then you said 16%. How is the public supposed to know? Then the reason I came was to say Cognia has not yet fully accredited this board. August 23, they'll be coming again. What assurance do we have that they're going to fully accredit the Clark County school system? I appreciate what you're doing here. Our children desperately need you. They don't need your money. They need your intention. And your intention is to take the money that you're given by this public and use it to the very best of your ability. The University of Georgia, at the end of the year, they said, spend money, spend all the money you can, because we're not going to get this money if you don't spend it. I watched how that money was spent. Let's look at how we're spending our money.
Thank you. Gordon Roden?
Thank you. Good evening. Dr. Hooker, thank you for your service here. Tim, thank you for bringing up tonight. It seems to me, and I'm glad to see all the board tonight. I've attended a meeting the other night when half of you weren't here. And I'm trying to think, wait a second, you ran for office to represent the school board and you don't come to the school board meetings. I'm confused. You know, I believe in Clark County, whether it be the commissioners or the school board, there is a virus that is affecting so many people in leadership. And that virus is spending more than we bring in. You know, the taxpayers of Clark County, we're not the goose that lays the golden egg. And I know that probably, I don't know about anybody on the board, but hopefully people that are listening to this message tonight are on fixed incomes. And those fixed incomes are set, whether it be a pension plan or Social Security benefits or whatever it may be. And so as things keep increasing, what are those people to do? How are they supposed to increase their income? Go back to work? Is that what you want our elderly to do, to go back to work? I just kind of perused at the last meeting we were here, and I don't want to get into a political thing tonight, but I know there was the issue about changing the school names, and that's fine and dandy. But I read in the budget, there's a $100,000 expenditure that's going to take place in changing those names. Maybe we could have hired a couple of parapros to help our children learn how to read at some of our schools with that $100,000 that was spent there. I challenge the board to take a pencil and go back to that budget and start saying, where can we cut? Where can we cut here? We talk about the enrollment. Mr. Denson talked about the enrollment. It's my understanding a lot of employees were hired during the COVID crisis because we had the CARES money. Well, now the CARES money's running out. Are those employees still on the payroll? Are all those employees needed? I think it's time for you to do due diligence as the Board of Education for Clark County and not continuing to put your financial wants on the back of the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Middlebrooks.
Thank you. I would have to start, Dr. Hooker, we've had several meetings, one as recent as about a week ago, and I'll say the same thing now as I said before. I greatly appreciate you being at the helm. You're the right person at the helm, and I know that we're going to be better for it. Having said that, I've had 2 children that were educated in Clark County school system. They got a great education. However, that was in the 90s. I would have to say now I have questions, and I know you're trying to, quote, right the ship, but I had no knowledge of what Jeb Bradbury was going to say, but I actually have the exact same stats that he got, and I got on my own. I assume he got on his own, but it really is very disheartening to know that we're talking about spending $17,000 per student in Clark County. And at all the other schools that we talked about, every single one of them, they're anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000, maybe one at $15,000. I mean, that seriously does mean that we need to take a hard look at our budget. And also, speaking of budgets, I take a look at mine. My property taxes went up not 18% or whatever was said. My property taxes went up 21.85%. That's my home. My business taxes at one dealership went up $27,140. I'm a going concern, I have a business and so forth, but those are real dollars. Those are real dollars that I have to recoup. So, I mean, there's a want and there's a need. I don't know about your budget. I sincerely do not know, other than I would sincerely ask you to take a hard look and see and go by what is needed and not necessarily by what is wanted. Please try to put yourself in our shoes. If I've got 2 granddaughters that are getting an education. One just got an education, and one is a rising senior at Prince Avenue. And she's getting an education for $11,940. And that right now, there's no threat of any shootings, knives, stabbings, and so forth. You've got a tough job. I know you have a tough job. I personally support the school system. I'm meeting with John Ward next week, and I'm going to support him again. I want to continue to support. But please let your citizens know that you're doing every single thing you can. 2% rollback, thank you, but that's really not nearly enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. We are going to move forward to item 4. That is adjournment of our millage rate hearing. The floor is open for a motion.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Evans made a motion. There was a second by Mr. Denson. Seeing that there are no objections, we are going to be adjourned here at 5:38 p.m. We will resume at 6 p.m. for our regular board meeting.